The first sign something was wrong was the car in my driveway. The second was the smoke coming out of my chimney. And the third was the quiet, creeping feeling that I was about to be told I didn't belong in my own life anymore. It was a Saturday morning when I drove up into the mountains, the same winding road I'd taken 100 times growing up, pine trees crowding in on both sides, air getting thinner the higher I climbed. I hadn't been up there in over a year, not because I didn't care, but because life has a way of piling things on until absence feels temporary, right up until it isn't. The cabin belonged to my parents. After they passed, it became mine, not a vacation rental, not an investment property, just a quiet place full of memories. My dad teaching me how to ski on the slope behind the house. My mom making soup every winter because she swore mountain air made people hungrier. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. So when I turned the corner and saw a silver sedan parked where my truck usually went, my first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion, like walking into the wrong classroom by accident. Then I noticed the curtains. They were beige, heavy, carefully measured. Curtains I had never bought, hanging in windows that used to be bare because my mom hated anything that blocked the view. And then there was the chimney. Smoke drifting up slow and lazy, like someone was home, comfortable, settled. I pulled in anyway, heart thudding a little faster than it should have, and stepped out of the car. The air smelled like burning pine and something else, coffee maybe. Someone's morning routine. I didn't even make it to the door. It opened before I could knock. A man stood there, late 50s maybe, silver hair combed straight back like he owned a mirror and respected it. He was wearing a navy polo shirt with a small embroidered logo on the chest, a pine tree wrapped in a circle, the kind of logo designed to look official without saying much. He looked at me the way someone looks at a delivery guy who showed up to the wrong address. "Can I help you?" he said. "This is private property." For a second, I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because my brain needed time to catch up. "This is my parents' house," I said. "I own it." He didn't blink, didn't shift his weight, didn't miss a beat. "I'm the association president," he said. This property was assumed under the abandoned home provision. He said it calmly, like he was reading a grocery list. Like this was a conversation he'd already had in his head, and I was just late to it. Abandoned. The word hit harder than anything else. As if the place where my dad taught me how to fix a broken door hinge, and my mom labeled every drawer had somehow been left behind by choice. "I never received any notice," I said. "We sent several," he replied. "Certified mail." His voice didn't rise. His hand stayed clasped neatly in front of him. He wasn't improvising. He was performing. Behind him, through the gap in the doorway, I saw the living room, or what used to be my living room. Different couch, different table. The walls were bare where family photos had hung for decades. It was the same space, but emptied of identity, like a hotel version of my childhood. "Where are my things?" I asked. "In storage," he said after a brief pause. "Most of them." Most. I noticed everything in that moment. The way he chose his words. The way he stood slightly sideways, blocking the doorway without making it obvious. The HOA logo stitched just large enough to be seen clearly. And then I saw her. A woman in the kitchen, dark hair pulled back, moving easily through the space, opening cabinets like muscle memory had already set in. She pulled out a mug from the cabinet my mother had painted white one summer because she said it made the room feel warmer. She didn't look at me. Not once. That's when the anger showed up. Hot, fast, demanding action. Every instinct in my body told me to shove past him, call the police, make a scene, reclaim what was mine. But anger is loud, and loud people make mistakes. "I'd like to see the documentation," I said. "The notices, the authorization." His mouth curled into a smile that never reached his eyes. "HOA records are available during business hours," he said. "Monday through Friday. You're welcome to submit a request." He was dismissing me from my own house with procedure. So I nodded. "I'll be in touch," I said. He nodded back, already done with me. As I turned to leave, something on the porch caught my eye. A small gray lockbox attached to the railing. The kind real estate agents use. On the side was a faded sticker with the same pine tree logo. A lockbox means codes. It means access. It means systems. This wasn't someone crashing in an empty cabin. This was occupation. I didn't say a word. I didn't stare. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove down the dirt road slowly. The only road in or out, my dad's voice echoing in my head. One road means one choice, he used to say. Come in or stay out. By the time I hit pavement, the confusion was gone. In its place was something colder, quieter, and far more dangerous. Patterns. And I could already tell this wasn't the first house he'd done this to. I didn't call the police when I got home. I didn't call a lawyer either. I sat at my kitchen table in Denver with a cup of coffee that went cold without me noticing, staring at the same spot on the wall like it might explain how someone else was sleeping in my parents' bed while telling himself he was doing the right thing. That first night, I barely slept. Not because I was panicking, but because my brain wouldn't stop replaying details. The HOA logo, the lockbox, the way he said abandoned like it was already settled fact. Men who bluff tend to overexplain. He didn't. He spoke like someone who believed the paperwork would save him. By Sunday morning, anger had burned itself out, and what was left was focus. I opened my laptop and typed the HOA's name into my email search bar. 21 messages popped up. 21 emails over the last 2 years that I'd skimmed, archived, and forgotten about because they felt like background noise. Unmaintained landscaping. Exterior compliance reminder. Failure to respond to inspection request. The kind of stuff people roll their eyes at and deal with later. Later never came. Each message was signed by the same man. Same tone. Same authority. Same assumption that if he spoke long enough, it became true. The last email, dated 14 months earlier, referenced emergency preservation measures under a specific section of the association bylaws. The same section he'd quoted from memory while standing in my doorway. That's when I pulled up the bylaws. Not the summary, not the FAQ, the actual document. 47 pages of dense language nobody reads until they have to. That section required 4 things before any action could be taken. Written notice by certified mail, a 60-day cure period, a formal hearing before the board, and a recorded vote authorizing intervention. For steps, for chances for me to respond. I check my mail records next. I use a USPS service that scans incoming mail to my registered addresses. Every letter, every envelope, going back years. There were no certified letters from the HOA. Not one. So either he lied about sending them, or he sent them somewhere I'd never see. That's when I checked my property tax records. The most recent bill had been sent to my Denver address, same as always. But the year before that, the mailing address had been changed to the cabin itself. Someone had updated it. Not accidentally, not automatically, on purpose. I felt my stomach tighten as the pieces started fitting together. If the tax bill went to the cabin and someone else was living there, then I'd never see the warning notices. I'd never know there was an issue. And when I missed a payment, someone else could step in and cover it quietly without raising alarms. I called the county recorder Monday morning. The clerk was polite, bored, and efficient. She confirmed there were no liens. No foreclosure, no transfer of ownership. The deed was still in my name. Then, I asked the question I was almost afraid to hear the answer to. Who's been paying the property taxes? She paused, typed, checked again. They've been paid on time for the last 18 months, she said, but not from the account you had on file previously. 18 months. Long enough to establish patterns. Long enough to build a story. Long enough to say, I maintained it. I paid for it. I acted responsibly. I hung up and stared at the wall again. This wasn't about taking ownership. It was about creating plausible deniability. That afternoon, I pulled data on the entire neighborhood. 64 homes in the association. I built a spreadsheet and started categorizing them by owner residency. 12 were owned by people who didn't live there full time. Vacation homes, rentals, inherited properties like mine. Then I checked enforcement actions. 5 of those 12 had been flagged for serious violations in the last 3 years. Among the 52 owner-occupied homes, 2. I sat back in my chair and let that sink in. Maybe absentee owners were sloppier. Maybe they missed more emails. Maybe they didn't mow as often. But numbers don't lie when the gap is that wide. That's when I found her name. Lena Morales, former board member. Filed a complaint 2 years earlier alleging financial irregularities and improper governance. Complaint dismissed for insufficient evidence. I found her phone number in an old meeting roster and called it without expecting an answer. She picked up on the second ring. I was wondering when someone would call about him, she said before I could even explain. We met Tuesday evening at a coffee shop about 40 minutes from the neighborhood. She showed up with a manila folder thick enough to need both hands. They pushed me off the board 3 years ago, she said, sliding it across the table. I figured someday someone would need this. Inside were copies of meeting minutes, financial summaries, handwritten notes she'd taken during closed sessions. She noticed money missing from the reserve fund. Funds allocated for road maintenance that never showed up in invoices. Special assessments collected for projects that never happened. When she raised concerns, she was thanked for her diligence. 2 months later, she received a letter citing homeowner complaints about her aggressive behavior. A vote was held to remove her on a date she was never notified about. Sound familiar? She asked. Too familiar. One document caught my attention. A financial report from 2 years earlier showed a reserve balance of $42,000. The most recent HOA newsletter listed the current balance at $11,000. I asked if there had been any major repairs. She shook her head. A few tree removals. Some signage. Nothing that explained 30 grand disappearing. Then she showed me something else. Another cabin. North end of the neighborhood. Owner lived in Florida. Elderly. Limited family nearby. Her property had been declared abandoned under the same provision. Same escalation. Same emergency preservation. There was a board resolution authorizing access dated March 10th. Lena flipped to her attendance notes. The March board meeting happened on the 17th. The resolution was dated a week before the meeting. Backdated. The owner passed away last spring, Lena said quietly. Her family found tenants when they came to settle the estate. They hired a lawyer, but it dragged on, and eventually they settled and walked away. I closed the folder. This wasn't a one-off. It wasn't personal. It was systematic. I thanked Lena and drove home in silence, my mind replaying every detail from my confrontation with him. The confidence, the wording, the certainty that I'd go away. I didn't call a lawyer yet. Lawsuits make noise. Noise gives people time to prepare. Right now, I had something more valuable than representation. I had surprise. Over the next week, I lived inside spreadsheets and public records. I cross-referenced emails with meeting dates, compared enforcement timelines, built columns for required procedure versus actual action. The gaps were everywhere. No certified mail, no hearings, no recorded votes, just paper, lots of it, designed to intimidate, not withstand scrutiny. One night, while reviewing the property survey for my cabin, I noticed something I'd glossed over before. The access road, the dirt road that runs from the county pavement up to the cabin. The same road my dad refused to pave because he liked the privacy. I zoomed in. The road wasn't marked as common area. It wasn't public. It sat entirely within my property boundaries, deeded with a private easement tied to the land. I felt my pulse jump. Every time he drove in or out, every trip to the grocery store, every casual drive down the mountain, he was crossing land I owned. Without permission, I called a real estate attorney the next morning. She listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. The takeover, the missing mail, the altered tax records, the patterns, the backdated resolution. When I mentioned the road, she stopped me. If that road is yours, she said slowly, then you control access. You can restrict it, gate it, monitor it. Even if he argues about the house, he has no argument about your land. I asked her what that meant in practice. It means you don't confront him, she said. You let him confront himself. By the end of the call, I had a plan. Not a loud one, a patient one. That Saturday, I drove back up the mountain and parked a quarter-mile away. I walked the rest of the way through the trees, camera in hand, documenting everything from a distance. His car, the mailbox with his name laminated over mine, the lockbox, smoke from a chimney, every photo time-stamped. Then I walked the perimeter and stopped where the dirt road met my property line. I stood there for a long time, thinking about my dad's voice about one road meaning one choice. This time, the choice was his, and he didn't know it yet. The gate went up on a Saturday morning. 2 contractors showed up just after sunrise with a steel frame, a solar camera, and the kind of quiet efficiency that comes from doing a job they've done 100 times before. I stood off to the side with my hands in my pockets, watching concrete get poured into the earth that my father used to walk every morning with a cup of coffee, breathing in the cold mountain air like it was medicine. By noon, it was done. A solid gate across the dirt road. A camera blinking red. A sign that read, clearly and without apology, private property. No trespassing. I didn't lock it right away. That part was intentional. I wanted him to see it first. I want to know what he'd do when the ground shifted under his feet and the rules he'd been hiding behind suddenly stopped working. 48 hours later, the email came. Subject line, unauthorized structure, immediate action required. It was from the HOA. Signed by him. Same tone as before. Same assumption of authority. He claimed I'd installed an unapproved structure on common property and demanded it be removed within 72 hours or face daily fines. There was just one problem. The road wasn't common property. It never had been. I replied the same day. Polite. Professional. No emotion. I cited the recorded deed, attached the survey, and stated plainly that the association had no jurisdiction over privately owned land. I copied my attorney and saved everything. 2 days later, a letter arrived by regular mail. Not certified. Same letterhead. Same threat. Different excuse this time. Community aesthetics. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. On the 5th day, the camera caught him. His car pulled up to the gate just after 9 in the morning. He got out, walked to the sign, and stood there reading it for a full 2 minutes. He didn't touch the gate. He didn't try the lock. He just stood there, shoulders tight, phone in hand. Then he took a picture and drove away. When I watched the footage later, I noticed the look on his face. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't anger. It was calculation. That night, his wife posted on the community message board. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Some people think they're above the rules, she wrote. Sad to see what this neighborhood is becoming. The comments underneath weren't what she expected. People started asking questions. About the cabin. About how long they'd been living there. About the reserve fund. I stayed quiet. By the end of the week, my evidence file was thick enough to need its own binder. Emails. Photos. Video clips, financial discrepancies, witness statements, the kind of file that doesn't need raised voices to make its point. My attorney reviewed everything and nodded once. We're ready, she said. Monday morning, we met with the sheriff. He was calm, methodical, and didn't care about HOA politics. He cared about deeds, surveys, and who had the right to be where. When we drove up the mountain together, the gate was locked. His car wasn't visible, but the camera log showed he was inside. The deputy knocked. 30 seconds passed. Then the door opened. He stood there in pressed slacks and a button-down shirt, like he'd been expecting guests. His expression shifted when he saw the uniform. Officer, he said carefully, is there a problem? The deputy explained why he was there and asked a simple question. Do you have any legal document granting you the right to occupy this property? There was a pause, just long enough. He started talking about bylaws, about preservation, about community standards. The deputy listened, then asked again, Sir, do you have a deed, lease, or court order? Silence. Behind him, his wife stood in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes wide. The deputy turned to me. You're the owner? I nodded. Then he turned back to him. Sir, based on the evidence presented, I'm placing you under arrest for criminal trespass. The sound of the handcuffs was quieter than I expected. He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He just looked at me once, not angry, not pleading, just stunned, like someone realizing too late that the rules they bent for years were never theirs to begin with. News spread fast. By that evening, the neighborhood message board was on fire. People shared their own stories. Unexplained fines. Meetings held without notice. Complaints ignored. 3 days later, the homeowners called an emergency meeting. Not the board, the owners. I went, but I didn't speak. I sat in the back and listened. He was there too, out on bail, sitting in the front row with his wife beside him. He tried to explain, tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. Someone interrupted him. You lived in that cabin rent-free for over a year. Another voice asked about the reserve fund. He didn't have good answers. The votes were quick. He was removed from a board. Unanimous. An independent audit was authorized. Unanimous. Full cooperation with law enforcement. Unanimous. He walked out without a word. The audit found exactly what people feared: tens of thousands missing, payments made to a company owned by a family member, forged minutes, unauthorized expenditures. The criminal charges followed: trespass, fraud, forgery. In the end, there was a plea deal. No prison time, probation, community service, restitution. Part of me wanted more. Wanted to see him punished the way the anger in my chest said he deserved. But there are other kinds of consequences. He lost his position, his reputation, his ability to hide behind authority. His name became public record for all the wrong reasons. The civil case settled shortly after. The amount covered the damage, the lost belongings, the unpaid rent, the legal fees, and, something harder to quantify, the feeling of being erased from your own life. I asked for one more thing: a written apology, public, posted on the HOA website for a full year. They agreed. Reading it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. A year later, the cabin looks different. New floors, fresh paint, white cabinets my mother would have loved. Most of my parents' things are gone, but a few pieces made it back. My dad's chair by the fireplace. The family photos back on the wall. The gate is still there. I thought about taking it down once everything's settled, but I decided to keep it. Not out of fear, out of memory. Every time I drive through, I remember what patience looks like, what documentation does, what happens when you don't let anger choose your timing. If you're watching this and you're dealing with someone who uses rules to take what isn't theirs, remember this. Document everything. Read what they assume you won't. And never underestimate the power of one small detail no one thought to check. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my place, would you have confronted him that first day or waited? Where do you draw the line between patience and letting things go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because stories like this don't end when the credits roll. They keep going every time someone decides whether power or truth gets the last word.